Thank you, Jim, and welcome everyone to our press club remarks for the year. Can you see the presentation that I've just put up on the screen, Jim?
I can see it.
Great. Well, thank you again for inviting us to talk about our economic development priorities for 2021 and our outlook for this year. I want to start by saying first an enormous thank you to the Baton Rouge business community. They have continued this year to invest in our work. Even as their own businesses have faced some great uncertainty this year. Also, a huge thank you to our staff over the last year for their hard work. While remote in this weird world that we are in COVID, that they've worked very aggressively on our mission to lead economic development in the 9-parish area. And I'll touch on a lot of our outcomes from last year. BRAC made it through the last 9 months financially in a stable place and without having to have any layoffs or pauses to any of our team. And so it's really important that we thank the business community really for making that possible. It wouldn't have been possible if they had not continued to stay with us throughout that really challenging last 9 months, and they continue this year. Over the course of the presentation, also, I want to thank some photographers from Instagram that we've been using their photographs for this presentation, some really cool shots that we've been able to grab. A lot of them have been through Go Baton Rouge. If you want to follow Go Baton Rouge on Instagram, they do some great work, and you'll see some of his shots here. And just appreciate them letting us use their artwork for this presentation. So 2020, of course, was one of the most challenging years for Baton Rouge in its recent economic history. And we'll show the slide on that in a moment, but it's worth understanding that difficulty is the kind of the overshadowing factor of this conversation, as well as kind of what we're going to see for next year. And in many ways, we've really been reflecting over the holidays that it was a disaster year, like the 2016 floods or Gustav in 2009 for us, only perhaps worse, doubly worse in terms of lost jobs and lost businesses over the course of last year. And it's also been not exactly similar to that kind of disaster. You can remember in 2016, that sense of purpose that we felt as we came together as a community, or after the police shootings that occurred that year. We were banding together to help each other, not only to get out of harm's way, but to survive and to get through this. We even saw some of those kinds of moments last year when the community really rallied to help each other. Moments in the business community when we saw folks buying gift cards to help restaurants to make it through, to pivot to delivery from their stores, or going out to support small businesses and making sure that they were seeing their customers as they were shifting so much to buying online and pick up in store models. The efforts we saw through the Arts Council, where they coalesced a group of volunteer sewists who are making masks for frontline hospitals to be able to have access to them. We saw businesses keeping folks on their payroll even as they were barely surviving, making sure that they were doing their part to help individuals through the crisis. Or what we saw last December, a massive first-time campaign of 225 Gives Day. We recognize that it's very hard to sustain that sense of crisis response for a pandemic, but we really do need to continue to channel, we think, that disaster-fueled sense of community spirit that unites us around a common purpose for our community. After watching in horror the incidents last week at the U.S. Capitol, we can see before us how our divisions and our social and political animosities, that really are as a country, have been tearing us apart. And so here in Baton Rouge, we have to be asking ourselves at the start of 2021 how we can come together, not only after a pandemic, but after a very complicated national election, to work together toward a better and a stronger Baton Rouge. And I would start by saying, let's let 2021 be the start of a new Baton Rouge and metro region. This year, to do that for BRAC, we're really going to be laying the groundwork for ourselves to change, to renew, and to strengthen our work as well as our strategy. Over the last 5 years, so back in 2016, we wrote a 5-year strategic plan for BRAC called Think Bigger. You can see the contents of it still on our website. But that plan was a 5-year plan. That means it ended in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic, and we were unable last year, as we had planned to when I was before you last year, unable to write a new long-term economic development strategy. Understandably, we needed to focus on the COVID recovery, but it also puts us in a unique place as we're sharing our comments here today with you, that we are in between one 5-year strategy and the need to write a new multi-year economic development plan for Baton Rouge. And so we see this year, this moment, as an opportunity for something different, in keeping with where I started about that disaster year and that need for a community sense of purpose, that we're going to be building this year a new economic development strategy, bringing in a lot of businesses to help us write that plan. We wanted to use that to help envision a future state for our economic development efforts, but also for our community. We're going to use that research to shed light on who we are as a Baton Rouge economy, how we stack up with other American metros in general geographic proximity to us. And then how do we take those strengths or even those challenges and weaknesses and make a new future economy for our community. Now, in my remarks today, I'm going to be sharing the tactical work plans that we're going to be setting for ourselves for this year, for 2021. But it's also critical that we talk about what we're doing to lay the foundation for a future of Baton Rouge. Before I get into that, though, I want to talk a little bit about 2020 and just some of the observations from this last year. One of the things that we have to start with is recognizing that we operated as BRAC in a way that we never really have before. We threw away our entire strategic plan for the year that I shared with you in our presentation last year before the press club. We shifted all of our staff to working on COVID response concerns back in 2016. And just I'll highlight just 3 really special moments that happened during the course of that. One, we were contacted by a business. I think this is a great example of what it means to be nimble in a response to a crisis. Capital City Produce called us and said, hey, we're trying to hire. We're surging in response to the demand for grocery support and produce. And we really need to help finding talent, finding people. And we are having trouble just kind of cutting through all the noise of the disaster. Out of that, we ended up creating the BR Works page on our website, an initiative to help match up employers with job seekers. And we ended up creating in about 48 hours a page on our website that went on to become one of the most viewed parts of our website, to help about 150 companies who ended up posting jobs to that site match up with thousands of job seekers that came in search of new opportunities to get back into employment. We also created an economic dashboard last year. One of the first, we think, from any kind of regional economic development organization that we've been able to find in the country. We created it on March 31st, right in the middle of the crisis as it was peaking, tracking weekly economic trends to be able to track things like fuel sales, so we could see how far down the economy had slid, as well as the pacing of it to return. And over the course of the next 35 weeks till the end of 2020, we were releasing those economic indicators in a repeatable fashion so that businesses could know what was happening, so the community could know what was happening in the economy. We saw that, of course, written up quite frequently in the media, but we were also hearing from our businesses that it was hugely useful to them to be able to know what was happening and to plan their own return and response and recovery for their own businesses. Another example was the PPE marketplace. We heard before May 15th that access to protective equipment was going to be one of, if not the most concerning barrier to getting business to reopen and to support them to do so. We wanted to make sure that not only did we not want the spike in prices or the lack of access to prevent them from reopening, we wanted to make sure that we could make it easy and accessible in a next day environment. So we partnered with Lions Specialty. Within about a week, we were able to launch the BRAC PPE marketplace that saw over 800 businesses use that as a source for getting access to protective equipment, over $400,000 in sales for PPE to area businesses through that. BRAC was also named the State Chamber of the Year, which is an honor that we were really proud to earn last year for how much it meant to us to be a service to the community to be able to recover. We also saw as another trend that everyone became our customer. We didn't charge for access to the 70 some odd webinars that we hosted to be able to serve businesses, and over 6,000 folks freely attended our webinars last year to find out information about federal programs. We wrote almost 300 different pieces of analysis of federal, state, and local recovery programs to make sure businesses understood what was happening and could get it in a succinct fashion. We wanted to do that all to make sure that any business who needed that information could access it freely, not just members or investors of the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. Of course, last year was also a different kind of crisis with what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, and BRAC really took it upon itself to be very intentional in our diversity and inclusion efforts. I'm proud to reflect back on the staff's efforts to be genuine and intentional about owning where we are as an organization as well as where is Baton Rouge. And so in our efforts to do that, our Diversity and Inclusion Committee made it one of our top work priorities for the remainder of the year. We conducted a survey of Black-owned businesses to understand the effect of COVID-19 on their businesses. We've made a push significantly toward the end of the Paycheck Protection Program to make sure that any businesses, especially Black-owned businesses who felt like they hadn't been able to connect to that financial lifeline for their business, that they were able to do so. And we provided at least 30 companies with direct connections to PPP lenders. And we've heard secondhand that word of mouth, those 30 companies connected to at least another 2 or 3 businesses who followed them to those lenders. And perhaps that is over 100 or so businesses who were able to gain access to the PPP because of that effort. We really were intentional about partnering with Dialogue on Race. We sponsored over 13 companies to have their first session with Dialogue on Race and their employees to talk about race and racism inside of their businesses. And of course, we continued the work of the Procurement Opportunity Partnership. In collaboration with Metromorphosis, we have a program that matches up large businesses with local disadvantaged businesses. We've seen now over the first 18 months of that work, over 60 businesses get contracts from other businesses in our community worth maybe 20 million in total sales to their companies. In collaboration with Metromorphosis, Raymond Jetson and Tyra Banks and their team, as well as Mayor Broom's administration, we were able to add 9 more large businesses to that partnership, and it continues to surge in importance. We've also been very clear about sharing the data on where we are as a community. We hosted a webinar to share the data on our economic disparities, which you can go to our website today and still find at brac.org/diversity. I will say that trend is one that's continuing. It's a very real one to maintain and engage on economic inclusion. And you'll see that as a priority remaining for the course of the next year and well into the future, we think. You know, another important trend that happened last year that folks may have not seen as it was unfolding was the amount of private equity from outside coming in to help Baton Rouge companies to scale and grow. We saw Barbecue Guys, which is a locally started company that's been here for over 20 years, exit and bring out outside investment to scale their size of their business headquartered here in Baton Rouge. We also saw similar with Walk-Ons, with Marucci Bats and the sporting goods company. They've really built the brand empire of Marucci, as well as toward the end of the year, General Informatics, a local IT company, has been able to bring in outside capital, scaling their headquartered company here in Baton Rouge to create a large Southern IT services company that we expect to get bigger. Of course, Bernhardt Capital has already been here investing and growing their portfolio of private equity-backed energy and infrastructure companies. And then new players like Fidelis Infrastructure, the capital behind Gruen Energy, Gruen Fuels, that's building out of the Port of Baton Rouge, are creating a Baton Rouge headquartered company in renewable diesel. All an interesting part of the trend of what private equity has been doing to invest in Baton Rouge-based companies. The other big trend, of course, was around remote work. We did a survey back in October and found that 52% of Baton Rouge businesses have already created a permanent remote work policy that they've changed as a result of COVID and what that's meant to their companies, or they're on the verge of planning to do so. And so what the implication, of course, of remote work is that talent is more mobile than ever. And so we've been thinking, what are the implications of that to our economic development efforts? Well, one, quality of life is a huge signal of where we are as a community to those workers. And of course, talent attraction and talent retention is more important than ever. And those two, talent issues and quality of life issues, have elevated, if anything, more after COVID, or will, as an important part of our economic development strategy for the future. We really do think that remote work and remote work trends it's really a whole new ballgame. We also saw last year under transportation some substantial progress on what has been the Baton Rouge area's #1 concern for doing business before COVID. We saw in Ascension Parish, the Crisis Coalition, its #1 project was to build the Ascension Parish widening. That project got completed last year. The Piku Lane overpass is under construction, another important mega project to serve the capacity needs of the interstates. We also saw that the I-10 widening is really finally to a place we're going to start seeing construction. A project that was committed funding back in 2016 will go under construction this year. We also saw that the environmental process for a new Mississippi River bridge has finally begun. Something that we've long talked about is underway to not only locate and identify the location for that bridge, but also to make sure that that environmental process is underway that will make it a build-ready project in the near future. With the elections of last year locally, we think that there's a trend to watch for the future. The new Metro Council has 6 of 12 new members, as we said last year, and we really see a totally different dynamic among the members, a sense of collaboration, of positive energy, of sharing of new ideas. We expect that that is going to be a trend for new levels of collaboration than perhaps this community has seen in the past. We're also optimistic that that, coupled with Mayor Broom's second term, will lead to kind of an opportunity for creating a strategy for the future about how some major issues get tackled at the local kind of political level. I flagged last year that we would see turnover in 2 super important jobs in education, the superintendent of East Baton Rouge and then the new state superintendent of education. Dr. Brumley has been hired as the new state superintendent. We're very excited about his plans and some of his new initiatives, like the one released last week called Fast Forward, which we expect to be something to see local area high schools focusing on. And then, of course, we expect in the next 2 or 3 weeks to have a new East Baton Rouge superintendent named. There'll be another shaping issue for the course of 2021. Last year, the legislature and the governor also were an interesting point to watch. We saw that they managed to find compromise on tort reform, even though COVID could have derailed forward momentum easily of what could have happened at the legislature. They managed to work out a way that the governor was able to even sign a piece of tort reform legislation last year. And amidst all of this, we may have forgotten how important it was to see that the issues of business climate and legal climate in Louisiana were able to see progress passed. They also, in the middle of that, passed a COVID relief liability bill, something that Congress couldn't do over the course of the last year, is to get something passed at a national level. And then finally, under business development, it's important to know that we thought when COVID started that we would have seen economic development activity come to a screeching halt. But we ended up seeing 12 economic development projects last year complete their work, deciding to invest in Baton Rouge, announcing 1,096 new jobs or retained jobs for our community, and 35 million in new permanent payroll added to our economy last year. And while we're down substantially in jobs, we can't take our eye off the ball that we need to make sure that major economic development projects are happening last year. With those projects will themselves be responsible for over $1 billion in capital investment. Baton Rouge was named in the middle of the pandemic as the major market of the year by Southern Business and Development magazine, signaling that our team continues to lead successfully in economic development and is being recognized for that as a leader in the South. These are just a handful of examples we thought were important that we also think are going to shape some of the priorities heading into 2021. But before we do, I want to just share a handful of the economic indicators that we think will matter to where we are for the next few months. As of November's data, we had, of course, lost in April about 13% of our total jobs, worse than what happened in 2016, worse than what happened in the Great Recession by at least double. At 13% of our jobs that were lost as of April. As of right now, we are only down about 5% of our non-farm jobs as a community, but not 5% is still close to as bad as we were during the Great Recession. At our worst in the Great Recession, we had lost 6.5% of our jobs, so still quite substantially down and concerning. But we have been able to already rebound, as you can see that that checkmark line almost. We've been able to recreate 35,000 jobs in our community since the worst of the pandemic, but we are still missing some 15,000 to 20,000 jobs that are going to shape the course of this recovery. Now, of course, a lot of that is folks that are still on unemployment insurance. At our peak, we were at 64,000 folks claiming unemployment insurance in our 9-parish region. Today, we're at about 15,000 folks who are claiming it. And you'll see at the tail end, that line represents that over the holidays, we had a spike of 4,000 more folks sign up for unemployment insurance, a concerning turn as we enter into 2021. And of course, the effect of the pandemic and the closures of parts of the economy continues to linger as an effect in our community. We can't take off take our eye off the attention for small businesses. Small business revenue, according to the data from Opportunity Insights, East Baton Rouge is almost down 22% still from where we were back before the pandemic. Livingston Parish, almost 32%. Ascension Parish is doing a little better at just 3% down, but still down overall from where we were. These are concerning indicators heading into the year and shape some of the priorities. Now, we'll be releasing more of those in Thursday's Advocate Economic Forum, updating some of the data that we put out last December in our economic outlook for this year. All of this, though, I think gives you a picture of where Baton Rouge is as we head into 2021. We asked our board of directors and all of our investors to give us feedback based on all of what we've just gone through about what the priorities for our work should be for this single year of our work. Of course, we'll be writing a new 5-year plan or multi-year plan for BRAC, but we saw 2 overarching priorities that we wanted to focus on for 2021. The first is continuing to meet the moment of the COVID recovery challenges, to be nimble and to focus on business development with rigor to make sure that we can come strong out of the economy out of the pandemic by the end of this year to see a lift to our economy. Dr. Scott has forecast that we will recover all of our jobs as a market by the end of this year or by early 2022. We expect not to take that for granted, that there's going to be a lot of work to get there. The second is what we call laying the foundation for the future of Baton Rouge. We see a handful of key priorities for BRAC that we can't take our eye off these priorities to make sure that we're going to be able to accomplish some substantial changes we think that we are going to pursue to make a stronger Baton Rouge after we come out of the pandemic. And lastly, something that's different, we made a commitment after the killing of George Floyd and a lot of our comments last year that underlying all aspects of our work, we're going to look at how diversity and inclusion and economic inclusion priorities can help us to close those disparities in our economy as a way to address and lift our overall economy. And so we're going to see throughout the course of all of our tactics where and how we're going to be able to focus on diversity and inclusion as part of doing that work. So I want to just highlight a handful of these just to give you some examples of what the tactics will look like, and then we'll come to your questions. Now, first is the business recovery effort. Today is an important day in the efforts to make sure that in 2021 we continue to focus and be nimble to help businesses through the pandemic. Today is the first day of the third round of the Paycheck Protection Program. Many businesses over the course of the first 2 quarters of the year were able to access this forgivable loan for their businesses to have a source of capital in their balance sheet to help them get through. This is the third round, and today in a limited access way, any business can go and seek assistance from what are called community development financial institutions. Now, in the coming days, we'll learn more about when all banks will be able to have access to starting their next round of PPP, but Congress saw fit in the act that they passed in December to start with community institutions first, to try to make sure that they were able to get capital out to small businesses. So any business that wants to change their partner of who got them their PPP, as of today, can go out to get their next tranche of PPP. The first 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, are going to be for anybody to get their first time PPP. And if you already got a Paycheck Protection Program loan, a forgivable loan, starting Wednesday, you'll be able to go to any of these CDFIs and apply for your second tranche of PPP assistance. And so it's an important signal to the new round of stimulus to business, to support for business, that this is happening. And we expect all banks in the coming days are going to be able to do the same. For BRAC, we want to make sure that we take the spirit of what Congress did with some seriousness. We talked about our efforts last year to support Black-owned businesses to connect to PPP. And so we're going to push again out to our email list of Black-owned businesses and to our community partners who did a lot of the outreach last year, and encourage that any Black-owned business or disadvantaged business who would like to be connected to a partner to access a PPP, whether they're for their first time or after Wednesday for a second round of PPP, please do reach out and we'll be happy to make a connection to one of these institutions to be able to give you access to the PPP. And we'd call on the media and just ask for everybody's help to get the word out clearly and succinctly to small businesses, all small businesses, about the availability of this new round of assistance. Now, the second thing that we're going to talk about is the business development opportunities that we see on the horizon, and what we talk about in seizing new business development opportunities to make sure that we're going to spur kind of growth coming out of the pandemic. Just three projects were really interesting and we're excited about. Mitsubishi Chemical last year announced in Ascension Parish $1 billion potential greenfield project, a world-scale facility to produce a chemical called MMA. But one of the few that was announced anywhere for a greenfield new project in the pandemic, and signals an opportunity for Ascension Parish to continue what has been an incredible run of growing manufacturing, especially in our region. The second project that's super exciting is what was announced by Gruen Fuels. They announced that they are in feasibility to create a renewable diesel project using soybean and other agricultural feedstocks to create what could potentially be a $9 billion complex in West Baton Rouge at the Port of Baton Rouge. This first phase that they're in feasibility for is about $1.2 billion of capital investment. And if that moves forward, we expect significantly to see trajectory for renewable fuels and renewable energy to have a center of production here in the capital region. REG announced a project this past year for their facility in Ascension Parish to triple its renewable diesel production. And so you already see Baton Rouge as being one of the leading places in the world making a renewable diesel and renewable energy sources. That project with Gruen Fuels last week was not just something we were proud of, but Business Facilities Magazine named the Gruen Fuels project as the #2 economic development announcement in the United States last year. A great recognition of something that happened or could potentially happen in the Baton Rouge area this coming year. And then finally, with ExxonMobil's announcement that they are considering and that we have the opportunity to compete for a major modernization of its refinery. Last year, of course, it was concerning that we saw 700 folks laid off by Shell and Convent. We saw other refineries pulling back substantially who have not been perhaps as modernized as they need to be, some here in our region, some in the southwest corner of the state. And so it underscores the importance that we as a community support the modernization of these facilities to make sure that we are protecting the jobs that are already here, but also to create a stimulus effect to help us push through this pandemic. If we are able as a community to rally behind ExxonMobil's modernization and win that investment, hopefully in the first or second quarter, we expect we could see construction beginning mid-year and creating a significant effect of sales and construction activity in our community before the end of this calendar year. Those three combined account for about $2.5 billion of potential capital investment that could be announced if we keep our eye on the ball. But that's not it. We actually have about 54 total economic development projects that are in our team's pipeline that we are working as we start the year. A lot of potential as we collaborate with our parish allies around the region, as well as with state officials at LED. Now, another initiative that we announced last year, we're very excited to prioritize as a focus, and this comes to the question of retaining our talent and attracting talent for our community. We launched an initiative last fall and signed on all of our higher education partners in our region in a focus of helping retain our college graduates. And our call to action to the business community was to help us accomplish this goal. Every small and medium-sized business in our community can sign up for a free to access a tool called Handshake. It's an app you can go to your app store on your mobile phone and download, and employers can search for jobs or post jobs, and our talent at our universities, for the first time, all are on one platform to be able to search for jobs at local small and mid-sized employers. We're pushing out with marketing efforts to make sure that we try to increase the number of small and medium-sized businesses, trying to help hire the talent that they need for their companies, but also to keep people here and while they're in college or after college. You'll see way more of that as we go forward for this year. We're on some other workforce programs that we're going to be going forward with. We're going to restart and relaunch our summer fellowship for high school principals and counselors, as well as pursuing an opportunity to take our BR Works page and make it a permanent jobs portal for our community. going forward, along with things we've been doing for many years, continuing to recruit executive talent and support businesses and organizations to recruit talent to our region and help them transition, as well as supporting educational reform efforts that we expect will continue over the course of the next year. I've talked a lot about North Baton Rouge and reinvestment and a focus on diversity and inclusion. Just a little bit more about that. We do intend to really push hard around this, partnering with Build Baton Rouge, with the mayor's office, with Impact North Baton Rouge, to drive more private investment into North Baton Rouge. And we will push today to say if there are businesses or private individuals interested in being a part of doing that work, we want to have you contact us to help. We're also going to be launching some new initiatives around diversity and inclusion, and continuing to focus on partnerships for businesses who want to get together with Dialogue on Race Louisiana for their offices. But I want to talk a little bit more about the procurement opportunity partnership that I mentioned earlier with Metromorphosis. We want to see more large businesses than the first 25 who have signed up join with us. Can we get to that to 30 and beyond, focusing on doing more business with our own disadvantaged businesses here in Baton Rouge? In collaboration with Metromorphosis, we're excited to announce today that Launch Baton Rouge, the team from Metromorphosis, their business services program, will be moving into BRAC's Entrepreneurship Hub at the Roberts Center for Economic Development in the coming months. As well, BRAC is going to hire a first full-time dedicated employee focused on diversity and inclusion initiatives in support and the opportunity to expand our efforts in this work. Now, transportation is not forgotten either. We want to make sure that we continue to champion a handful of initiatives that are a huge priority for our board to make sure that they go forward. Now, we are reaffirming here publicly our support for the state legislature to increase the state gas tax as long as specific projects like the Baton Rouge Mississippi River Bridge are included in the funding mix for that, and we understand that they will be. We also want to see that the reforms to state transportation efforts called for by many of our community's legislators are included as part of that concept. Under transportation, we will see new construction moving forward this year. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that the College Drive flyover, slated to begin in the next 60 days, as well as the Acadian Rail Trestle project, those two need to get underway. We're excited to support those and make sure that there's community and business support behind the I-10 widening, a project that every time they've tried to do it in the past 20 years, NIMBYs have been able to kill that project. So we are finally seeing transportation initiatives moving to construction on mega projects again. We're also going to join in a national movement to call for Congress and our Louisiana delegation to pass infrastructure and transportation initiatives as part of the nation's economic stimulus, hopefully by this summer. If done, this could also stimulate and accelerate the pace of construction for our I-10 widening, the possibility for funding a new bridge, or longstanding priorities of ours like the passenger rail between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, which we could see potentially as part of that effort. And I want to end, where we started, thanking the business community for their support and their investment in us, and seeing what is so important about our work, perhaps more vital and important than ever, as we saw over the last 9 months. This year, we intend to create a stronger economic and business climate for the Baton Rouge area. We are an organization led by volunteers and a really capable and talented staff who are focused on this community, who love Baton Rouge and are proud to say it. And we want to invite others to join with us to help push forward to make this community the one that we expect it can be, to continue to channel that disaster-fueled sense of community spirit that we can bring us together for a better and stronger Baton Rouge. And I say it again, let 2021 be the start of a new Baton Rouge and metro area. And we're going to be pushing forward with that as we build our strategic plan for the future. And with that, Jim, I would love to say thank you to you. And if there are questions that folks in the audience have for me or our team, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them.
Are there any questions for Adam? Is everyone available, Katie, to ask a question if they wish?
Yeah, I'm allowing everyone to unmute now if they would like to ask their question.
Okay,
Yeah, I had a question. This is John Hightower.
Hey, John.
okay, John.
Yeah, under the new phase of the PPP, will nonprofit organizations be able to participate like they did in the past?
Yes, John, they will. In the act that was passed, if actually they expanded the access for nonprofits to participate, and they will be able to apply for a first-time opportunity for a PPP assistance. Again, as I mentioned earlier, today through CDFIs, if they haven't gotten one in the past. And in that case, they don't have to show that they are applying for a second round. The rules are a little different if you're going for a second round. If you're going for a second allocation of PPP, you have to be able to demonstrate, same for a business, that you had losses, that your business was down at least 25% or more, and at least one quarter of 2020 as compares to 2019. And so more clarity is going to be coming forward in the near future, John, but yes, nonprofits are eligible, and they've widened it that not just 501c6 nonprofits are eligible, but also community associations, 501c6 nonprofits will be eligible to apply as well.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Holly Dutchman here with the Business Report. I had a question. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about the initiatives that you kind of teased that y'all are looking to launch this year about diversity and inclusion.
Sure. We have been very interested in how to scale and spur more private sector reinvestment in North Baton Rouge. So we're looking at whether there can be additional incentives put for private reinvestment into North Baton Rouge. So part of our research internally is going to be around what that could look like, Holly, is to create more incentives to induce private investment, and doing so in collaboration with a lot of the other community organizations and economic development organizations that are working in this space, like Build Baton Rouge, like Impact North. So we're going to be looking first again at incentives. Second, we've created programs to support internal business services for businesses seeking to create more diversity and inclusion initiatives inside of their businesses. We've done that in the last year with Dialogue on Race Louisiana. We've done that also kind of as a behind the scenes consultant to a lot of businesses who have been calling us to ask about guidance and suggestions for how to set up internal corporate diversity programs. We're looking at the possibilities of doing more around that, and in keeping with what we already have as an award called the Diversity Star Award, which has criteria for recognizing business success and diversity, building out kind of a set of guidelines or suggestions for how businesses who want to build out their corporate diversity programs can do so, and perhaps some kind of more structure around what that can look like. And then lastly, we've been thinking a lot about how other regions have been able to build business services programs to support diversity and inclusion work and to support businesses who are seeking to grow. And so we're looking at some examples of how that's been created in other communities, and whether Baton Rouge can create some form of business service model to support disadvantaged businesses to scale and grow kind of in a consultant fashion on business growth. So those are three examples of the ones that we're going to be talking about in more detail as we get a little further in the year.
Sounds cool. Do you know if BRAC is planning on looking on recruiting a grocer to North Baton Rouge by chance?
We have been doing so for the better part of a year now. So y'all will remember that the mayor signed on a partner, Hope Credit Union, who have been marketing an incentive, a loan product that's available for grocers who will locate in North Baton Rouge. BRAC has been the economic development support team working kind of behind the scenes in support of that effort, alongside the North Baton Rouge Economic Development District, or Impact North as they're called. And so our team has been kind of doing collaborative lead generation along with kind of a coalition of folks with the mayor's office in Impact North to be able to call on grocers to present to them those incentive opportunities, alongside Hope Credit Union and some of the members of their team that have been at it. So we're definitely focused on what I would call the lead generation phase of that, while others have been focusing on kind of determining which sites and locations are most attractive for a grocer to locate on a focus and priority that Build Baton Rouge, for example, has been working on. So we see all of those efforts continuing to gel. I would hope that it's able to see a win. It's too early to tell how long it's going to take to identify and secure a grocer. But our staff that work on economic development work in collaboration with East Baton Rouge are definitely deeply involved in that effort.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Adam, which areas have been hardest to hit, have been most affected by the last 10 months, and the restaurants and sectors like that? And what is the chamber doing to help the cause to get these people either back in business or get them back on their feet in some other way?
That's a good question. So we'll share some more of the specific data on that in our presentation on Thursday, Jim. Hardest hit unquestionably has been leisure and hospitality as an industry sector. In the data, they are down close to 22% from their jobs from pre-pandemic levels. So think of restaurants, eating establishments, bars, hotels. They all get lumped in the national data as one large industry sector. But absolutely the hardest hit overall. That includes, by the way, things like event locations, places where we go for weddings, places like theaters, the arts community. So there's a substantial portion of our economy that has been really walloped by this as an overall sector. The second has been the construction industry in Baton Rouge. Construction as an overall sector is down about 11%. So if leisure and hospitality is at 22%, and you have construction at about 11%. Now in construction, we think that's been largely the demand destruction that affected our manufacturing community that hit industrial construction. Some huge numbers of projects put on hold, a lot of our maintenance services firms that have had to pull back some of their teams. And so we think that's the biggest effect overall. And a lot of folks have been seeing other aspects of construction, like residential construction, have been well maintained, if not picked up some. But overall, this has been industrial construction. And our efforts, a few things, Jim. One is focusing on making sure that all of those communities are able to gain access to the federal relief programs. The best lifeline to support those businesses has been and will be in the next coming months, access to a second round of PPP for their businesses to be able to make it financially through this mess. A lot of what we've done over the last year has been webinars and services to make sure that businesses are able to gain access to knowledge and information about the programs and how to take advantage of them. And then thirdly, we've been out contacting and calling a lot of businesses over the last year to make sure that we can reach out to them and find out how they're doing, and encouraging them to reach back out to us if they are challenged by some specific thing that they're looking to try to get addressed, whether that's advocacy to the state administration about how the lockdowns have happened or restrictions that have been tightened and then relaxed over time. So those have been ways we've been trying to be effective to the industry. In terms of theatrical locations, I will note the federal relief package included a specific live event grant program that with the SBA will be going live with in the coming weeks that will be able to help places like, I showed a picture on the screen of the Manship Theater and others like them to be able to access special dollars to be able to make it financially through this crisis. So it gives you a picture of where we are and some of the things we've been doing, Jim. There's a question posted in the Q&A window, Jim, from Kristen Mossbrucker. You mind if I just read that question, or you want to read it and I'll answer it?
Well, I'm looking for it. Can you see it?
Yeah. Let me just kind of note her question was, how significant is it to get unemployed workers back into the labor force for the Baton Rouge economic recovery? Other than BR Works, are there any other new initiatives to get folks back into jobs? And how did the short-term certification training effort go? Is this a significant focus in 2021? It absolutely is, Kristen. And I will say BR Works continues to be probably our flagship initiative to try to help what we call beat back unemployment in our region. With 15,000 folks claiming unemployment insurance, it's a big deal to make sure that folks gain access to it. You're referring to another initiative that we launched last year as part of our research and project team efforts. We wrote a short-term training guide. What we outlined were 300 different short-term training programs that people could gain access to if they weren't able to find a job and wanted to go retool in a 12-month window or less, some of them 12-week trainings or less, where to find the job training opportunities that also line up with what we see on BR Works, the industry sectors that we see that are and will be hiring right now. And so we launched that last year. Folks can go to our website and find that training guide or contact us to ask us to link up with it. We've been able to put that on, for example, the library's job seekers portals, their computers that they have through the library website or at their physical locations. And we've been able to work with others in the workforce industry to help post that and email that out to job seekers. One of the things we hope to do more of this coming year is working with the Louisiana Workforce Commission to distribute both the link to BR Works and making sure that more folks are able to see that as a tool for finding jobs, and just making sure that we don't take it for granted that some things are hard to find, and that may be the most important tool to helping somebody, as well as that short-term training guide and trying to get it out so that more folks can access it. Hope that answered your question, Kristen.
Will you encourage businesses to have their employees vaccinated?
Oh, absolutely. We have very little direct involvement, Jim, in the kind of the vaccination efforts, other than to say how important it is, we think, for folks to be able to gain access to it. Of course, for the vast majority of workers, that phase is still to come, and so we're willing and eager to help do more to promote that. But that's really been upon the leadership of the healthcare community to get that vaccine program rolled out. I would put it in my arm today if I had access to it, and will as soon as I do.
You have any thoughts about the events of the last week?
Just as I shared, it signals, for us, a reflection at home. There's been a lot of conversation about what it means to us as a country to see our Capitol building attacked and stormed as it was. But for us, I think it's just a reflection of the divisions that exist here at home too. And if we let those divisions create the worst of us, just to paralyze us in terms of our anger and animosity at one another, we are not going to be able to move forward as a community. And that's why I think that's so important to remember that sense of unity we felt back in 2016. We saw flashes of over the course of this year. I think it's going to be upon us all, Jim, to dig deep. The pandemic is a long, marathon of an experience, and it feels that way in the business community. But in reflection upon last week, I think we really have to find that place within us to pull together with folks that we disagree with. I thought that there was a great example of that in what happened in the Metro Council's selection of a new mayor pro tem. In the comments that were made by one council member who was seeking the position, didn't ultimately get selected for the position. His comments were angry or lashing out or even just silence. He said, I want to take this moment and get to know those who opposed me and were against me, and lean into the moment to get to know them better and to know their experiences better. I thought it was really an uplifting way to not take the worst of that moment, but to try to say, I want to come together with my opponents and those who disagree with me to try to find a new future for our community. I think that's the kind of spirit that I hope that we can find as a community, rather than what we saw last week in Washington.